They chose their king, their power was met, but we don't answer to Ottawa yet. No crown gave us what we've earned, just dirt and fire and lessons learned. Now the ground it shakes, the steel it groans, and Alberta walks alone. We ride sovereign steel through fire, through frost. We ain't the last, we're the line they lost. Alberta stands, never on its knees. A nation born in the forge of the free. From the rigs to the rails, the crops to the code, we lit their streets, we bore their load. They laughed at pride, they mocked the West, but freedom don't die, it just waits for the test. The cowboys ride, the farmers rise, 5 million strong under open skies. No leash, no lie, no foreign throne. This land is steel and it stands alone. We ride sovereign steel through fire, through frost. We ain't the last, we're the line they lost. Alberta stands, never on its knees. A nation.
Welcome. It's 7-Eleven Daily Summary. It's Bruce Scholl, and I am excited to be here. What an amazing time to be alive. An extraordinary time that we are living through, and I'm grateful that you're here with me. So make sure to share this out. Share this out to one other person at least. We have got to get more eyeballs on this information. I have an extraordinary guest. I'm excited to have him. I've been watching much of his work over the last few years. But as you'll find, this is a deep well and a very staunch truther that, anyway, you're going to be amazed. I think that you're really going to like this episode. We're going to talk about the creation of currency with James Roguski. So before we get into that, I always want to say thank you for being here. I want to say thank you to the Circle of Friends. And obviously the challenges that have come before us over the last 5 years have really influenced and shaped who we are. Definitely Bruce Scholl and Unscrew the News wouldn't be here without those challenges that we went through. So I appreciate you being here and participating in this discovery of truth. And, certainly my friends and my family and the circle of influence that I was exposed to really has changed my trajectory and my life. But I appreciate you all. One of the other things, I'm not your investment advisor, but I do suggest you holding gold and silver. And the Nugget Snacker is right here in Calgary, a local business that you can support. And I do suggest getting a gold and silver subscription. It's a great way to get in if you are new to that field of actual money. You can give them a call them at 1-866-644-2121, and no question is crazy. So give them a call. All right, we're going to get into unscrewing some news, and I'm coming to you from the heart of the battle-ready nation of Alberta. We bring you truth and optimism. Our goal is to break free from the media and the globalist mind control. It is November 13th, 2025. This is episode number 218. And like I said, I have James Roguski and the creation of currency. I'm excited to have him because I have listened to him on one of my favorite podcasts for a number of years with SGT Report. And tell you a little bit about James, and he'll fill us in a little bit more. But I'm just looking at his Substack here. He had been hosting a number of websites, he says, for a decade, deleted my account and tens of thousands of hours of work. They gave no reason other than the content violated the terms of service. And that is so evident of what we've been going through, the censorship. Anyway, they deleted many of my websites, but they ignited my passion to burn even brighter. And I want to invite James on to Unscrew the News. Thank you so much, sir. It is a pleasure to have you. And
well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
And you know what? Like I said, I've been listening to you for a number of years on one of my favorite podcasts, SGT Report, and I'm honored to have you here speaking with me and my guest and my audience. So it feels like a very, very huge honor because when I look at your body of work, man,
I'm gonna nip that in the bud right now. I'm just a guy, okay. I think of myself as a carpenter. I went to school of ancient times. 40 some years ago. I'm 65.
And they use pencil and paper.
Yeah. No, in all seriousness, I studied computer science on punch cards.
Oh, is that right?
And so figured out at that point in time that I was being lied to, and I dropped out of school. I didn't finish. I ended up working as a carpenter, renovating old homes, old Victorian homes in New England. Moved out to California and managed a couple of mom and pop herb and nutrition stores. So I'm very much in tune with, being healthy naturally. And so, no, it's just, we're just two guys chatting, man. It's just, I spend a lot of time pointing out BS, and it's a full-time job because, I learned a couple of rules from the plumbers that I worked with. Okay. Their first rule was payday was on Friday, but their second rule was, and I don't know what I can say on your thing, so I'll keep it clean. Excrement flows downhill because they make it at the top. And that's something to pay attention to. The other rule that plumbers had was don't bite your nails, but that's a whole nother story.
Well, I appreciate that, and you remind me a bit of myself. And I didn't tell you this before we got started, but the reason I started this was, obviously during the dark times. I call them the dark times, and I realized as a dad that I needed to do more. And this was born out of the need to document the stories of what people went through, because I knew that at some point, because of this extraordinary time that we're going through, it reminded me of some other points in history, is that somebody needed to document more of the stories so that somebody could look back, whether it's my kids or somebody else in the future, and said, oh my gosh, this is what they were actually experiencing. Like here's documented stories. And it wasn't AI at the time. These are real people. So anyway, you remind me a bit of me. It's just that,
well, the problem we face is that quote unquote the victors write the history, and it's already being rewritten. I mean, if you try to search for truth online, you're going to have an awfully hard time. And that is part of the reason why, I continue to try to write things, because I'll just dive into one aspect of it.
Yeah, go.
A little bit more than a year ago, I was doing a search for something that I knew was out there, and I was having a hard time finding it, health related, to do with the COVID-19 jabs. And I did a search for something, and everything that I got back from the search results was propaganda. It was the FDA, the CDC, New York Times, Washington Post. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. None of that is what I was looking for. I was looking for the, counter narrative to that. And I realized that if I was having trouble finding it, and I'm deep down the rabbit hole already, then other people would have trouble. So I spent a month at the end of last year, and starting the day after Christmas until January 20th, when Trump was inaugurated, I wrote a whole series of articles, enormous amount of information. You can find it all under not safe and not effective.com. Because, I heard one too many times somebody go, oh, the jabs are safe and effective. Well, hold on a moment. There is no legal definition of the term safe. There is no legal definition of the term effective, and they are neither. They're dangerous, and they make you more likely to get the very thing that they say it's supposed to protect you against. So, if y'all want to go down the rabbit hole, not safe and not effective, if you can scroll down on that just a good chunk, there's, I believe, I forget if I did 27 or 28. There's a couple of documents you probably ought to download. But then there's sort of a table of contents resource center. And I honestly forget if I did 27 or 28. But
we're going to get to the end. 27 looks like.
It is the mother lode of information. And, some of it will disappear. You looked on some of my other websites. Sometimes things that I put on some of my work will disappear. And I leave it there to document how the censorship is happening. There you go. I don't know, a decade or so ago, I did the undeniable truth about 9/11.com, and some of the things have gone belly up. They've been censored.
Right.
But when I did this, I can't tell you. I mean, I went through more than thousands of hours. I went through weeks and months of video to compile things that I felt were undeniable about 9/11. And, I told you before we started, my favorite way to talk about this to people is if anybody starts talking about 9/11, I ask them, well, what do you think about Building 6? And most people will be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Some people who are modestly aware will go, you mean Building 7, right?
Right.
And I go, no, I mean Building 6. And people go, what? There's more? Holy crap. And so part of what I battle against is it seems like the vast majority of people deal in belief, and I try to deal in evidence. And so you can show people evidence that conflicts with something that they believe, and they won't let go of their belief. And that's really what the scientific method is supposed to all be about.
Right.
If you have an idea, if you think that you've got an explanation for something, whether it's Alberta, or whether it's COVID, or whether it's cancer or other health issues, or 9/11 or banking or whatever, I have learned that people do not want to let go of their beliefs when confronted with evidence to the contrary. Now, I did an interview 15 years ago or so, and the person asked me a question, and I still wonder why this answer came out of my mouth, but I was like, a good day is when you learn something new. And a great day for me is when somebody comes up to me and they go, hey, Jim, you're wrong. And they proceed to show me that I am wrong. Because then you just go, oh man, how did I get through 65 years of my life and I'm wrong? I don't want to be wrong. I want to be right. But a lot of times people will say, oh, you're wrong. And that's not the case. I do have my ducks in a row, and they are wrong. They are confused. But when somebody points out something to me that I thought I knew, and the truth is different, oh, you are my best friend. Okay. But it seems like for most people, that just puts you under attack. Oh, how dare you challenge my cherished belief, however wrong it may be. And this is what we're dealing with, unfortunately, all over the place.
Well, as I said to you, when I realized that we were being lied to, and I know that many people feel this way, it's a huge betrayal. And I know that I was angry for months, just trying to wrap my head around how deep this hole went and how desperate the lies have been. That was really hard to come to terms with, the understanding that your government wants to kill you. I mean, that was such a hard that was a hard lesson for me to figure out. But yeah, the difficulty for people to actually come to terms with the reality seems overwhelming for most, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah. You know what? I reached out to you, James, obviously for many things that I think that you and I could probably have 40 episodes that we could do. Uh, More than likely, it's more than that. But the one thing that I thought was intriguing, and it was one of your most recent Substacks, talking about the creation of currency. I said currency, and I'm sure that you said money, but that's here nor there. But it's I'd like to get into that and tell us what your thoughts are on banking, because as you pointed out, that most people don't realize that it's not fractional reserve, and it's not they're lending out the depositors money. Do you want to get into that? Do you need me to bring
Oh
up
yeah, I mean,
the?
it would be helpful if people, go to my Substack and look at the article,
I,
jamesroguski.substack.com. It's a couple of days ago. Um, Henry Ford was quoted as saying that if people understood how the banking system actually worked, there would be a revolution by morning. Okay, and um, I don't know how it all happened, but a couple of weeks ago, I looked into something, and then all of the algorithms everywhere I was going were just
yeah.
feeding me related, videos and articles and all that sort of stuff. And I just got fed up with the propaganda that was coming past my eyes and ears. And I said, well, I think I understand this. I woke up to this probably 30 years ago. Okay. And I realized that the massive amount of misinformation that is out there in the world is overwhelming. And I went looking to try to find a very specific aspect of it, and it was almost invisible. It was just buried under absolute lies. So, to cut to the chase, when people talk about central banks and printing money, and the big thing here in the United States is we're $38 trillion in debt. Um, uh, let's just you and I chat, because the other thing's just probably going to distract people. The issue is when a person says, or if someone was to ask you, how much money do you have in the bank? Okay,
Mhm.
don't answer the question. I don't want to know. It doesn't matter. Whatever number you say, it's wrong, because
Right.
you don't have any money in the bank. If you have an account, if you have a savings account or a checking account or whatever it may be, that's not your money. That's the bank's money. Legally, you've loaned them whatever money is in that account, and you have a claim to it, but it's not your money. It's their money. And
Mm.
that comes into play in specific instances. There's been issues around the world where, if you've ever heard of a bail in,
Yes.
okay, um, there are other people who have lent money to the bank who have claims that are above yours. And so, if that bank was to ever be insolvent, that's not your money. Now, there might be some government program to try to protect you here in the United States, the FDIC, maybe that'll be there. But, they only have a tiny little fraction of a reserve for all of that's going on in the world. But that isn't the big issue. The big issue is the vast majority of what we call money in the world is created by commercial banks. When people go to get a loan, whether it's for a car or a mortgage for a home or whatever it may be, when you sign the promissory note, when you pledge to pay back, this loan, you are the one who actually creates the money.
Mm.
That legal document has value. It's your pledge to work your butt off for the next 30 years, right? To pay your mortgage plus interest, whatever. And so when you hand that over to the bank, they go, thank you. you just gave me, whatever, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And people believe that, oh, well, all of these other people have savings accounts and checking accounts. So the bank has got all these deposits and,
Right.
they're going to loan me somebody else's money. Right. But that's not what happens. What happens is they just type some numbers into the into their keyboard. There's an additional entry on the other side of the ledger. They literally create money out of nothing, out of thin air. Now, for most people, they've maybe heard about fractional reserve banking.
Correct. Yeah.
And fractional reserve banking is a nice story, but it's built on the lie that they're lending you somebody else's deposits. Number one, nobody deposits their money in the bank. They loan it to the bank. And then people think, oh, well, they take all that money and they loan it to me at a higher interest rate.
Right.
That is not what happens. What happens is they just simply create money out of the clear blue sky, out of nothing, out of thin air, whatever you want to say. And so it has always amazed me how banks could, fail, how they could go out of business. You've got the power to just create money out of nothing. And you can't make that business model work. You fail in that. That's astonishing.
Right. Right.
Now, to try to put it into a couple of different perspectives, okay, there have been frauds that have occurred. You can think of like with a real estate agent, right? A real estate agent doesn't own a home, right?
Mhm.
They're just the middle person, middleman, middle woman.
Yeah.
They have a bunch of people that they know who might want to buy some property. They have a bunch of people who want to sell their property. They put the deal together. They work out all the paperwork, and they take a commission. Okay, a product exchanges hands. They facilitate that exchange, and so they make a good living doing that. Okay, think of a stockbroker. The same thing, right? You got a bunch of people who want to invest in some companies. You got a bunch of people who currently have somewhat of an ownership stake in all these various companies, but they want to not own that stock anymore. They want to sell it. So they facilitate the exchange. Well, there have been stories where people have wanted to invest in gold and they bought gold certificates, but it was completely fraudulent. There was no gold.
Right. Right.
Right. And so if you went to a stockbroker and you bought a stock and they just put into your account, yeah, you own the stock, but they didn't actually have the right to do that. They didn't have somebody who was selling it on the other end. Okay. You'd be like, oh, that's fraudulent. You can't do that. This is what bankers do every day. This is how the vast majority of money is created. And so the working class, somebody who is maybe a carpenter or, retail store manager or whatever, we exchange our time, our skills, our effort, our energy, our knowledge, our experience for money, right? A wage or a salary or a commission or whatever it may be. And bankers just sit there on the computer and create money. Now, it should make your head go boom, and people will go, oh, that can't possibly be right. But that's how it works. And so when you look at all of the debt around the world, okay, just the national debt aspect of it, right, which is actually very tiny. There's maybe $100 trillion where, the US is leading the way. We're $38 trillion in debt. And I don't know, Canada's maybe 3, 4, or 5 million trillion, something like that. There's maybe $100 trillion in debt. And there's interest being paid on that debt. And to grossly oversimplify it, do you have any U.S. treasuries? Do you hold any of that debt? Okay. Now, maybe you have an investment with some investment firm, or people might have a pension. And so maybe the investment firm or the pension is invested in that, and that's part of their portfolio. Okay.
Yep.
But for the most part, poor people are not earning interest off of that debt.
Right.
It's the top 1% of the world. 1% of 8 billion, I believe, is 80 million people. So there might be 80 million people in the world who are invested in, national debt. And this is essentially how the rich get richer. Poor people who work for a living, relatively poor compared to the top 1%,
Sure.
pay taxes, work hard, and our government overspends doing God knows what with the money, blowing it up, or,
Yeah.
coming up
Sending it
with
off to,
projects, or,
yeah.
carbon credits, or whatever the heck it may be. And they work themselves into debt that transfers money to the top 1%. So when you just realize that the top 1%, as a general, overly simplified version of reality, they love that debt. It's transferring wealth to them,
Right.
and they don't care about everybody else slaving
Right.
away, where that debt causes everything to be a little bit more expensive every day that goes by. Your wages don't keep up with the increase in pricing. And so unfortunately, I think people just don't understand how absolutely evil the entire banking system is. Now, if you could hack into your bank account, okay, and add a couple of zeros to your balance, if you got caught doing that, you'd be charged with some kind of crime. But banks do that all day long, every day. They
Right.
just create money with a computer entry. It used to be written in a ledger. Okay. Um, it's so absurd that the mind it just doesn't register. Okay. Now, that's the kind of stuff I, dig into, whether it's health related, or, 9/11, or cancer, or heart disease, or whatever it may be. The lies are so big that even when you document it, and in the article that I wrote, I mean, document, statement after statement, document after document.
Yeah.
And I just found a mother lode of even more. I'm going to have to add it into the article. Um, People go, "Oh, that can't be right. That's crazy," but that's what it is. And so, you know, what happens when you learn the truth, um, is most people don't want to know. It's a strange thing with human nature. They really don't want to know. They find it more comfortable living the lie. Now, I don't know if you saw the
Right.
movie The Matrix,
Yeah,
okay?
for sure. For sure.
And for people who haven't seen The Matrix, this is going to fall flat. They're not going to understand. But, there's a scene where one of the characters is like, I know this steak isn't real, but it sure seems real. And they preferred to not face reality and live in the matrix, live in the dream world.
Right.
And if you want to swallow the red pill, it's harsh. And most people, they want a blue pill. They just want to go back and keep living in that fantasy world.
Well, that's where you and I are, and obviously a number of people, most of the people watching this are in that red pill state. It would be nice if we could just shut it off and not have to face reality, but we are
Mhm.
facing the reality, and it's hard when you're swimming upstream sometimes, and the rest of the people are just mindlessly going about their lives. I want to bring up one part of your article here. Do you believe in the concept of fractional reserve banking? Stop believe the lie. Fractional reserve banking is not the driving force in the money creation. Banks do not lend a percentage or a fraction of the money that they have on reserve. And I thought this was really interesting here. The date Federal Reserve has eliminated all reserve requirements in the United States. They announced the change March 15th, 2020. I wonder if anybody really noticed this, because it happened to be coming up around the time of
Mhm.
a certain dark time, is what I call it.
Mhm.
And it took effect March 26, 2020. Imagine that. And this really goes to something that I talk about on a regular basis, and you probably do as well, is that the distraction. And then what are they doing behind the scenes? And this is clear as mud that they did this right during something that they called a pandemic
Mhm.
that that affected the whole world. Isn't that interesting?
Well, see, even this though is part of the propaganda, part of the confusion, in the sense that they really weren't doing fractional
Yeah,
reserve
we're
banking
doing it anyway.
the way people think of it. And
Right.
what triggered me really to write this article was, as I mentioned earlier, as I was, looking for other things, I was getting buried with all of this propaganda about, oh, how bad fractional reserve banking is. It's like, well, that might be the case if that's what was actually going on, but has not ever been the case.
Right.
And so when you realize that it's way worse than that, and that they just create money out of clear blue sky, and what you put in the bank are you're not putting your money in the bank, you're loaning the bank money, and legally it's all treated very, very differently. um, it's interesting that it happened at that time, but even though all of that is clearly documented, and years before that it was demonstrably shown that that wasn't the case, people are still making videos, like thousands of them, talking about the fractional reserve banking system. Okay. And the concern that I have, and if you go to the article and you watch some of the information there, the pattern has been the bankers have this wonderful system from their point of view. Okay. But they're greedy and they abuse it, and they push it to the limit until it's ready to topple. And rather than expose it and for everybody to understand how we've all been abused for generations, typically what happens is they trigger a war.
Right.
And because of the war, or because of COVID, or because of something, right, they change the rules.
Hmm.
And oh, it's an emergency, we're at war, we have to change all the monetary policy rules. And you can see it coming right now. You can see how the system is just teetering on the brink of falling apart. And there's this nebulous thing out there between central bank digital currency and programmable money, and negative interest rates, and AI and everything else, all the surveillance and all that sort of stuff,
Digital ID.
digital ID,
Yeah.
and the threat of war all over the world. And none of the people want this, but the top 1% have pushed it so far, with getting way down into the rabbit hole with all of the gambling that they've been doing with various derivatives. Okay.
Yes.
We're talking like quadrillions of dollars.
Hmm.
And when that bubble pops, okay, um, they're not going to be able to contain it. They're not going to be able to fix it. They need to have everybody pay attention to, the threat of nuclear war, or maybe it's
Right.
going to be space aliens, or, who knows what. They need a big distraction to take your eyes off of the manipulations that they're doing. And, somebody will submit a piece of legislation out of nowhere, like, oh, how did you write that overnight? That's so
Right.
you're just waiting for it to show up, and
Yeah.
it gets run through, whether
Because
Congress
it's
or
an
Parliament.
emergency. Because it's an emergency.
Man, you guys must have stayed up all night writing that 1,000-page document. And all of a sudden, boom, there's a new system. It's hard to imagine what could be worse than a certain group of people being allowed to just create all the money they want out of the clear blue sky. But they're crafting that probably as we speak, to drop onto the world to replace the mess that they've created. And if you are, it's like the Patriot Act showing up, the day after, a couple of days after 9/11.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
It's like the CARES Act showing up a couple of days, after COVID-19 got declared, to be this pandemic.
Yeah.
Um, there is legislation around the world that's going to try to implement something new, and they'll shove it through. we have to pay attention. We need to get people to be awake now to see it happen.
Mhm.
Because what happens is they put these things through and everybody's busy playing on TikTok or, watching the Super Bowl or, Epstein files or whatever else might be distracting you. Whenever I see everybody talking about the same thing, not just on mainstream media, but alternative media, I turn and I go, okay, this is a distraction. It's real. Things are happening. But why is everybody paying attention to that? What's going on that nobody is paying attention to?
Right.
Okay. And so if you look at it that way, you realize that almost everything in the media is meant to give you information that looks like it's important, but it's meant to distract you from what they're doing in the back rooms,
Right.
pushing through. And then it's a fait accompli, it's done. And 5 years later, you're like, what the hell happened?
Right. Right. So a distraction. I'm just going to try and for the audience, an example would be a missile hitting the Pentagon and trillions of dollars that were missing. Then the file and all of the evidence is now missing.
Right.
I mean, that would be another example of
Oh,
a distraction.
did you say
right?
missile? You must have meant
Sorry, the plane.
commercial airliner. Yeah,
I meant the plane with hundreds of people and chairs and wings and luggage, and none of that was ever found on site of the Pentagon. But oh, sorry, I got that wrong. It was completely mistaken on my part. All right, very interesting. So I think that's obviously very important for people to understand. I think the main point that you just pointed out was that the whole distraction, the whole look over here, here's the shiny thing that's happening. Sydney Sweeney and maybe the Super Bowl, like you say, is coming up, and what are we going to be paying attention to, or some sort of costume malfunction or something, and then everybody will be happening to be paying attention to that. And in the background, we'll all be locked up with chains to our digital ID and have to be using CBDCs. So one of the things that is nearly passing, and I know that you said that you're paying attention to what's happening here in Canada, but there's lots going on as in the United States. There's a deluge of things that are coming up and bills that are being passed, and there's so much that's going on. They're about to pass UBI here as well, and that'll be I think the end of the beginning of the end, really, for Canada. But you're probably well aware of UBI and how that looks, and you probably have an opinion on that.
Well, I'll give you a different view, maybe. Okay.
Yeah.
If you're talking about universal basic income.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes I've heard it called universal basic dividend. Okay. Now, if you look a little northwest of you to Alaska, they had the foresight decades ago when they built the Alaska pipeline to set up the Alaska Fund. And, citizens that lived in Alaska for a certain period of time, they get a couple of $1,000s a year as a portion of the revenue from the oil that's under the land, that is Alaska. And so I don't know. I think the Crown holds maybe 81% of the mineral rights.
Oh, I see. Yep.
Okay, in Alberta. Well, there's a very good argument that take any state, any province, and go, well, who has the mineral rights to that? Is it held in trust for the entire society, or should we allow a couple of people to make the deal and pay pennies on the dollar to do the extraction and let them make all the profits? And so, arguably, if you look at the value of the mineral and forest and everything else that is in Alberta, could that be used as a fund like the Alaska Fund, or look at Norway with their sovereignty fund, not Norway arguably is one of the wealthiest countries in the world, because rather than allow a couple of a small number of people or corporations to suck the life out of the earth underneath your feet and turn it into profit, if that was what was being used to share the wealth amongst the people, we've got 4 states in the United States that are commonwealths: Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and I think Massachusetts. There are resources within any territorial boundary that you look at it and you go, well, everybody should benefit from that.
Sure.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
part of the work. And so I don't know the details of what they're talking about. It's probably not going to be based on that.
No, it won't be.
Probably based on the desire to get people dependent upon that, so that it essentially gives control. It sounds like a gift. It sounds like, money from heaven is coming and it's going to take care of my problems. But it will come with strings attached, and it'll come with an off spigot, an off button.
Yeah.
And if you don't do what you're told to do, you won't get any of that money. And unfortunately, probably the vast majority of people will fall for the game. It's like, oh, great, free money.
Well,
But
free
then
money.
You have to comply. Then you have to comply.
Yeah, we're seeing that in New York with the election of, or the selection. Sorry, I meant to say the election, but selection of Mamdani, and he's offering free. I mean, he and AOC are good friends, and Bernie Sanders, and they're all about making sure that people get free healthcare and free groceries and free rents, and
well,
we'll see how that goes.
That's an over exaggeration of the situation there. New York is an absolute mess. I lived there for a year.
Yeah.
That was enough. Thank you very much. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. It's true, because it's harsh, and it is I think only gotten worse and harder to survive there. What has come before him is such a mess. We shall see. But more to the point with Alberta. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a very spectacular opportunity that I hope the people of Alberta truly take advantage of. When I saw your logo, when you asked me to be on, when I first looked at it, I was like, wait a minute, because I thought it was one of my many websites. I have a website entitled Screw the Who, as in the World Health Organization.
Yeah.
But you're Unscrew the News, so we're channeling each other on some channel.
We certainly are.
But Alberta has an opportunity to start fresh. But I've had a number of conversations, and I know we've only got 5 minutes, so I'm going to open up a can of worms just by the time you're going to have to close it.
Well, I'm okay with that. If you want to go a little bit longer, are you okay?
Well, I just want to keep it simple, and
sure.
To a certain degree, I think that as an American, right? So I cannot speak as a Canadian, but in dealing with people with the WHO, most people that I have communicated with in Canada and the UK and Australia, New Zealand, the Commonwealth nations, we had our revolution 250 years ago.
Yes, you did.
And to my knowledge, there is no crown land in the United States. Maybe they do have something, but to my knowledge, that's not the case. Yes, you have to break away from Ottawa, but you also have to break away from the crown. And a lot of people have talked about, should Alberta be independent? Should it join up with some other provinces? Should it be the 51st United state? Every territory that might want to be a state in the United States is obligated to have a republic form of government. And here in the United States, it drives me crazy. People say all the time, we have to protect our democracy. If it was the case, and I'm not advocating this, I'm advocating, I think it would be great if Alberta just full on became independent of Canada as a whole and independent of the crown, and charted a whole brand new course. But you're going to have to get past the idea of the difference between a democracy and a republic. And people in the United States don't know the damn difference.
No, they definitely don't.
And there's no reason why people in Alberta would realize that, you're obligated, if you want to be a state in the United States, to have a republic government. And the odds are good that that process is going to turn everybody's head upside down. It's not just getting away from Canada, it's getting away from the crown and deciding, do you want to have the same type of government that you've, grown up under? Or are you really ready to break the mold and do something new? And I encourage breaking the mold and doing something new and charting your own course. There's an opportunity that Alberta has, probably pretty unique in the world at this point.
I think those are fantastic words for Albertans, and we are a battle-ready bunch, and I think that those are very encouraging words. I appreciate that, and I know that my audience, most of them are with me on this venture, and we'll definitely take that into account. But no, in regard to UBI and in regard to Alberta, I think that that's a worthy understanding, and I think that we have talked. We've actually done a number of studies and worked out what our resources are worth and what we think we have as a nation. We've also talked about being a republic for sure. I think that that's definitely an avenue that we want to look at, going in that direction for sure. But going back to the UBI and the understanding of the resources and paying it back to the citizens, we have talked about actually eliminating taxes in general because of the wealth here. So I think that there could be a payout. But UBI is being offered. Just so you know, you're probably already aware of this. It's coming from Ottawa, and it'll definitely have strings attached, and very much like the.
Oh, convoy. It's more like a noose, but whatever.
Yes, I mean, it's very much like the convoy. If you gave money to some undesirable, then you would have your account turned off. Before you.
When somebody shows you who they are, you should pay attention, and they've already shown what they are capable of doing.
Yeah, or our most recent WEF puppet who's been put into place is much worse. He is Trudeau 3.0 essentially. I mean, he skipped 2.0 because he was just so bad, and the corruption is just so evil. I know that we're near the end of our time for today, but I really appreciate you coming on here. I have to finish off by you answering the question that you posed a long time ago at the beginning of our show tonight. What was Building 6?
Oh, if you can still find it.
Yeah.
Obviously people know about the Twin Towers. They know Building 7 just crumbled without an airplane. If you go,
well, that was because the owner said he'd pull it.
Exactly. If you go looking for Building 6, you'll find a building that just has a crater just blown out of the middle of it.
Really?
It doesn't get much. I don't know. It's like the marketing program for Building 6. Everybody forgot about it. What airplane, with what, terrorist with the box cutter took down Building 6? Yeah.
Well, it was probably a piece of shrapnel that took out Building 6. Something that came from one of the buildings.
It's I've done construction. I've installed a small amount of structural steel in some of the buildings that we worked in. Okay. When you look at how the Twin Towers were built and you look at how they came down, okay, maybe if an airplane hit the 80th floor or whatever floor it was, maybe the top might tip over and fall off. But to have the entire thing just crumble into dust, it boggles the mind that people fell for that. That's just not, I've physically torn buildings down with, a hammer and power saws and things. They don't just fall apart. Okay.
No.
They need some help. And for anybody to look at that and think, oh, that was because it got hit by an airplane, it's absurd. And it really makes you wonder about the human race. How can people be that easily fooled? Now, whether it
Right.
was thermite or some low grade nuclear whatever, I mean, there's all kinds of different theories, all kinds of different things, but buildings don't just crumble into dust. And so for people to believe the official narrative on anything, okay, boggles the mind.
It does. It does definitely boggle the mind. I'm going to show your Substack here for people to find you at jamesrogowski.substack.com.
And the hard part is spelling my name. So jamesrogowski.substack.com. Yeah.
Well, we've got it right here so everybody can see. It's James, Roguski, and follow this gentleman. He has got so much information, and you'll have weeks of information to look through. There is
let me close with the
Yeah.
thing that you were helped connect us. I always give my phone number. I'm in California. People can call me directly at 310-619-3055, 310-619-3055. I get to meet a lot of cool people that way.
I was going to say, you must, when you open yourself up to that, you must have such a treasure trove of people that reach out to you, and probably some loonies too, but probably some amazing opportunities.
It's been just about 100%. I mean, for the most part, people around the world are absolutely spectacular, and I am frustrated that it is hard to reach other people. Like there are people out in the world who do what you're doing, and they're almost impossible to get in touch with. And
Right.
I don't want to be like that. I want to be human and real, and I tend to learn something from whoever reaches out to me, and it's a good thing.
Well, you are a gift, mister. I really do appreciate you. I would love to have you back on again.
Anytime.
And if we can talk more about Alberta, I would love to do that, or whatever subject that you'd like to talk about. Maybe we talk about 5 different subjects next time. But I'd love to do this again. And
my pleasure. Thank you.
I know we have to talk about the Who. That's one of the other areas that you spent a lot of time on. This man is a treasure trove of information. He is digging. So if you like to get to the bottom of the truth, look up James Roguski. I've got his, let me see. I'm just going to put it back on here. This is his X profile. And you said you don't do a lot of time on social media, but it looks like Substack is a good place to find you.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you and all of the work that you do. And I know that my viewers really like to dig and get to the bottom of the hole. I don't think that there necessarily is a bottom at this point. We haven't found it yet. I know that I haven't, and it looks like you probably haven't found it either. So we'll continue to do more of this work. And I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. I'm just going to say goodbye to the audience, James, if you don't mind hanging around.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. As I always say, make sure to share this out, get some more eyeballs on this information. We have got to wake up more people, and you can do that by sharing this out to, let's just say, one more person today. Send it out to your friends, send it out to your family, whatever you have to do, because we have some great information that we're trying to share with you. Anyway, let's keep sane together. Keep your head on a swivel. And this is Bruce. I'm out of here. Thank you so much for watching Unscrew the News. I appreciate your participation in freedom in Canada. Share this information and help others to wake up. God bless.